Power Hour with John Lee.
Beverly Alit. Here's another one. Who's she? Completely different. And what did she sell? She sold survival. Again, essential human needs. So she's a village girl, bit of a tomboy, kind of middle England type stuff. But she's an attention seeker, apparently, constantly hurting herself. She actually used to beat up her boyfriend as well, which may be irrelevant, but it shows a kind of abusive personality that she had and later displayed in life. And she had basically Munchausen's, what's referred to as Munchausen's syndrome, which comes from a fictional novel about Baron von Munchausen, who used to go around the world, telling tall tales about how he got this injury and that injury, and he'd actually injure himself to say that he got hurt in a battle or whatever. And she had that. She used to injure herself. She used to cut herself and all that. And constantly turning up at the doctors, constantly turning up at the hospital because she'd had another accident and everyone had to feel sorry for her. But it was attention getting, you know. And she did that for a very long time. And then she kind of changed it because she got a job as a nurse, right? And even though she was underqualified and she didn't have the requisite experience, they were desperate. They were understaffed at the time, and as they still are today. And so they took Beverly Alit onto a children's ward, Ward 4 it was called, and that's where they had kids going in there, sick kids. And immediately, as soon as she gets on there, she starts saving babies and young kids. They're fine, then they're not. And then Beverly Alit's on the scene immediately to do the basics and then call a doctor. And she's the hero or the heroine of the hour. Time and time and time again, right? This is happening because she appears to have developed what's called Munchausen's by proxy. This is where instead of hurting yourself for attention, you hurt someone else. It's typically a child, a member of the family, where you can keep the child ill, and I actually know somebody who's a victim of this. You keep the child ill, and then you keep saving the child and curing the child, and everyone feels sorry for you because of your sacrifices and, you know, your heroism and all that. So she was doing that, but she was doing it to other people's kids in a hospital. And she was ingratiating herself with the families of these children. So the families are bringing the children in, and they're leaving the child there, obviously, and she's the nurse, and she's talking to the family. It'll be all right, don't worry about it. Go and get a sandwich. And when they went, literally, she's walking in the room and doing whatever nasty shit she's doing to hurt the children. And she stopped saving them, and she started killing them, right? And this bitch was using all kinds of different poisons. She's using insulin and all kinds of chemicals that I don't even know, and massive quantities. And then when she's killing them and she's finished killing them, I mean, it's just so fucking wrong. She's going out and she's going up to the families and talking to them in the hospital, and the families are actually warming to her and welcoming her and all that and feeling bad for her. She killed the fucking child. It's awful. So bad. And one of the families actually made her godmother of a young girl that she eventually killed. She comes under more and more suspicion, and she's arrested, but they can't get anything. They haven't really got anything on her, so they have to release her. And the problem with it is that in a hospital, when somebody dies, the person is removed from the room, and then the room is sterilised as a matter of course. It's not sabotage. They might need to bring someone else in there this afternoon. It's just the way it is. So they sterilise the room, and now as a crime scene, it's fucked. You can't get any information from that because they've professionally sterilised the room, and I totally understand why. And she understood why, and she capitalised on that. And so eventually when she's arrested and she's, you know, clearly under suspicion and being accused of these crimes by the police, families and local people attacked the police and said that they were just trying to fit her up, you know, trying to frame her for the crimes. But eventually she was living with a couple, a man and a woman, and they had a dog. And she poisoned the dog. And she poisoned the man. And so they went to the police and said, look, there's something wrong with this woman. And just to take the piss, by the way, when she was confronted by the man and the woman and their families about these incidents of poisoning, she claimed that she'd seen a poltergeist. And it was the poltergeist that was poisoning peeps. Absolutely crazy. So eventually she's arrested. She's brought in. She's charged with 4 murders and 11 kind of other similar crimes. And when you see her, pictures and images of her when she's arrested, she's very jolly. She doesn't look depressed. She doesn't look scared. She certainly doesn't look embarrassed. She seems to be enjoying the attention, which is what she's been trying to get all her life. And, I mean, I'm not an expert to say whether or not that justifies even a drop of it. But no, it doesn't. No, you can't justify her crimes, but can you understand it? No, I don't think so. Eventually, anyway, after the court case, she's sentenced to 13 life sentences. So this woman will never get out of prison. And I really think that's the right thing to do. Keep her in a box. She's very dangerous. She kills kids in cold blood. And she sources poisons to bring them to work so she can kill the most vulnerable people in society. And she was selling survival, and she was selling it because she took a salary in exchange for what she was doing at work. So she was selling the idea or the promise of survival to families. Leave your kids with me and they will survive. And, you know, the sick bitch that she was probably had the poison in her pocket when she was saying that, you know. Horrible. So she's probably the lowest form of human life. So we'll bounce from that to someone who did something probably not as bad, but still pretty awful. Lance Armstrong. What did he sell? What did Lance sell? He sold inspiration. So what's the basic story of Lance? He's born poor in Texas. Certainly not rich anyway. Described as a hard scrabble life. He's growing up, he's very young, he's brilliant on a bike, and he wins race after race in America and actually becomes the first cyclist to win $1 million. It's a lot of money for a young person. And then he becomes world champion at 21. So this guy is good on a bike. And he gets into the bike world, you know, into the world of cycling. And through that, he becomes aware of and meets a guy called Dr. Ferrari, who was an Italian doctor who was extremely intelligent and knew exactly how to cheat in cycling. And Lance makes a beeline for this Dr. Ferrari and says, give me some of that. Give me some of these drugs that you sell and make or whatever. And he does that. And then Lance, having lost a race against Undarin, who was a great Spanish cyclist who was on EPO. This is the drug that they were taking. He lost to the Spanish team, to Undarin. And he was told, it's because you're not on EPO. So he starts taking EPO, and then he has to stop in the middle of a race. He goes for a checkup because he's not feeling right, and he's got 3 kinds of cancer. This is a young man with a brilliant future, tremendous ability. Boom. 3 kinds of cancer. Just a tremendously horrible, sad event in life, in anyone's life, and for everyone around him. And when he comes out, he's been drugged, and he's been operated on, and his brain, and his lungs, and everything. And when he comes to, I think he's probably still in a bit of a stupor, because the medical staff come into the room and they start talking to him, and they ask him, have you ever had any performance-enhancing drugs? And he just reels them off. But he reels them off in front of friends and members of his cycling team who were shocked to hear this. He's supposed to be an athlete, not a cheat, And so they heard this and they left the room. There were plenty of people who heard him say this. So he comes back anyway, He recovers, and he joins the US Postal team, the US Postal cycling team. Now, just leave it there, right? Just the fact that you've come back from these cancers and you can actually ride a bike, and one of the cancers was testicular cancer, just the fact that you can get on a bike, much less race it, is impressive enough, for everybody. Thank you very much. But no, he goes back to Dr. Ferrari and he says, right, I'll be your Frankenstein. You do whatever it is you want to my body, and I'll put that body on a bike and win everything. Right? So he starts taking EPO, he starts taking all these other kinds of testosterone and cortisone, everything you could possibly take. He's got a guy on a motorbike. His specific job is to follow the races and go to different hotels and motels to meet Armstrong. They've got a full system in place. And they are basically cheating non-stop. And he wins the Tour de France after the cancers, Lance Armstrong. And so he's a tremendous symbol of recovery and a hero to people around the world, especially people suffering from diseases, which is a wonderful thing if you're actually inspiring people. So I'm a bit conflicted about this because he had a foundation as well, the Lance Armstrong Foundation, which was set up to help people, particularly with cancer. And I think the people who work at that foundation do wonderful work, dedicate their lives to it. And that's completely overshadowed by the fact that this guy on a bike is cheating. And that is far less important than the cause itself. And that's a terrible shame. And that's one of the forms of damage that Lance Armstrong did around the world. And he started getting criticised, and I'll tell you why, because he was taking the piss. He's going up a mountain at one point, right? And there are people in the pack who are much better at going up mountains than Lance Armstrong. But he's just gone up the fucking mountain, fuck it, boom, 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 boom. And he's not breathing heavy, doesn't appear to be sweating. He's even talking on his radio mic, just talking like that, while he's boosting it up a mountain on a bike. And anybody who knows anything, especially about cycling, is watching that and saying he's on the juice. He's clearly on the juice. I mean, you might as well just get to the top of the mountain, drop an E, and snort a big line of cocaine off the handlebars before you smash it down the other side. I mean, you're making it really, really obvious. And I think that was part of it. He was like saying, yeah, you can see I'm on drugs, can't you? But I'm untouchable. I'm Lance Armstrong. I'm a legend. And he continued to do this and stuff it in people's faces. Prove I'm on drugs. To the point where he actually appeared in a film. And he actually, just so you know, he won 7. He stole 7 Tour de France's. And when he'd stolen 5, he'd already stolen 5. And he's not leaving it. He appears in Dodgeball. Right? And as I'm filming this in Spain, I'll tell any Spanish people. In Spanish, it's called Cuestión de Pelotas. But the real title is Dodgeball. And the protagonist of the film is going to quit. It's too difficult, he's going to quit, basically. And Lance Armstrong appears in the film and talks to him. And obviously the content of that conversation is that quitting is bad and that Lance Armstrong would never quit. And Lance Armstrong had cancer and he came back to win the Tour de France 5 times on the trot in a row, consecutively. What he didn't mention in the film, that he was actually cheating.
I think you better hurry up or you're going to be late.
Actually, I decided to quit. Lance.
Quit? Once I was thinking about quitting when I was diagnosed with brain, lung, and testicular cancer all at the same time. But with the love and support of my friends and family, I got back on the bike, and I won the Tour de France 5 times in a row. But I'm sure you have a good reason to quit. So what are you dying from that's keeping you from the finals? If a person never quit when the going got tough, they wouldn't have anything to regret for the rest of their life. But good luck to you, Peter. I'm sure this decision won't haunt you forever.
And it was all bullshit. So he starts hammering his critics. He's bullying everybody. He's bullying everybody in his team. He's a mafia don. He's a proper gangster without a gun. He didn't need a gun. He had a bike. And then there's a guy called Floyd Landis who was on his team. when he retired, when Lance Armstrong retired, Floyd Landis did the same thing. Up my neck and off I go. And he wins the Tour de France. And everyone's looking at this, really? You won it. And he used to be on the same team, and he learnt his drugging trade from Lance Armstrong. And so he gets caught, and then he tries to get back into cycling when his ban was over a couple of years later. He tried to get back into cycling, goes to Lance Armstrong, says, put me on your team. Lance says, nah, and leaves him out in the cold. So Floyd Landis is not feeling this at all. And he goes around telling everybody not just what Lance Armstrong's doing, but how he's doing it in detail. And so they start an investigation. There's a grand jury. Everyone thinks Lance Armstrong's going to get busted and go to prison. And then the FBI drops the case. Right? He had so much contacts, so many contacts that the FBI dropped the case. And then after that, the pressure got too much. He lost all his sponsorship deals. He goes on Oprah and admits to everything, but very casually, with a little smile on his face, just like a final fuck you to everybody involved. Yeah, I conned you all. I took the piss. I got exactly what I wanted, and I'm not fucking bothered. And he's not bothered to this day. Still looks very casual. So here's